Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between. With me, your host, Brett Stanley. Welcome back to the Underwater Podcast. And just before we get into this week's episode, I wanted to talk about a new magazine we've published, dedicated entirely to underwater artists, called Waterproof Magazine. This issue features interviews with two of our past guests, Elsie Moore and Sue Watica, a feature on Andre Musgrove's new short film, Child of the Cenote, articles on printing and perfecting the split shot with Cheryl Walsh and Damon Lobel, and loads of photo editorials created by some of the most talented underwater artists from around the world. You can check it out now at waterproofmag.org, or I'll link to it in the show notes. This week, though, my guest is Jamie Johnson, an underwater photographer better known by her artist name of Birdee. Jamie's work has a rawness to it, and she captures the female form in a very real way. Through her images, she examines themes of fertility, strength, and grace, as well as exploring the healing element of water. We talk about her love of film photography, creating double exposures underwater, and how music plays a huge role in her inspiration. Okay, let's dive in. Jamie, welcome to the Underwater Podcast.
Hey, Brett. Thank you so much for having me.
Where are you at the moment? You travel quite a bit, so where in the world are you right now?
I do travel a lot these days. Right now, I'm in Athens, Georgia, which is just a sweet little town about an hour outside of Atlanta.
Oh, cool. I think the only reason I know of Athens, Georgia is that where REM is from?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of music here.
That's awesome. Do you like music?
I do. I love music. My boyfriend is a musician and he's here recording right now. So that's what brings us here.
That's great. Does music kind of end up in your work at all? Like, does it influence your work?
You know, it really does. I have found that, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you've figured out this element that really kind of unlocks inspiration for you. For me, that's music. In a lot of ways, when I listen to music, sometimes I get visions almost immediately and I'll get ideas just pouring in for shoots. And yeah, it's really beautiful. It's almost like the key that unlocks inspiration in a lot of ways.
That's amazing. Because for me, music, I tend to get stuck in the lyrics. Like I find the lyrics tend to give me the vision, you know, like a run of words will kind of make an image in my head. And
oh, yeah.
Is that how it works for you, or is it more the kind of the musical side of it?
I think it's more the musical side. That's really interesting that you say that, because I've thought about that before, how I can listen to a song over and over again and I don't know the lyrics. So strange.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's like I'm listening to just the feeling that it's giving me and the world that it's taking me to, not necessarily the actual lyrics of the song and what they're talking about.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So yeah, like things like Pink Floyd and things where you've got these very like soundscape sort of things. You know, it's less about the lyrics and it's more about the emotion.
Yeah. And then it's something that because of that, I will be listening to a song with friends and it's like, oh no, I don't know the lyrics to sing along, but I love the song. I promise. I listen to it all the time.
Yeah. I'm the same with like names of songs and stuff. Like I'm terrible knowing the names of them. Like I'll know the lyrics and I'll sing along like till the cows come home, but I cannot tell you what the name of that song is.
Same. Yeah. So does listening to the story in a song, does that inspire you? Would also poetry or reading books inspire you in the same way?
Yeah, so I'm very wordy. You know, words and phrases to me kind of spark something in my brain. So, you know, like 3 words together can basically build a whole world in my head.
Wow.
And so it's more that really gets me in and creates those kind of images for me. And I don't particularly see in my work. I don't sort of look at my work and go, oh, that was those lyrics. But it's just a kind of the words spark an emotion in me, and then that emotion then sparks a vision. So I guess, you know, similar to what happens with you with the musical side of it. You know, it might not be directly influenced by it, but it gives you a pathway to something else.
Yes. Yeah, that's so interesting. It's so neat to hear how different people are inspired in different ways. And it's so exciting when you figure that out, those sources of inspiration for you and how, like, what that pathway is for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. To me, it's interesting how people get influenced by things and inspired by things without even knowing. Because one of the things I try to ask people on the show is, what are your influences? And it's one of those questions that kind of stumps people because they can't kind of nail down sometimes what it is that influences them in whatever way.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about it. And I wonder if it just takes practice observing when you get inspired, where did that come from? Or, how did that come about? Maybe it's a practice of sitting down and taking time to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So speaking of that sort of thing, so when you do your work, like, are you, and we'll get into the details of your work in a minute, I guess, but when you are creating your images, are you creating something that you've already kind of pre-planned, or are you kind of building a situation where you can create some cool stuff and then afterwards you're like, oh, that's the thing I was after?
A little bit of both. I have learned this past year, especially, the beauty of planning. And when I first started doing photography about 6 or 7 years ago, it was all just feeling in the moment, no planning. And that's kind of how I ended up in the pool too, feeling an overwhelming feeling of wanting to create this beautiful ethereal world that felt like a dream and an escape for me. And over time, though, as now I'm doing commission shoots, there's a lot of beauty in the planning as well.
Yeah.
And so we'll plan to a certain extent. I love making a vision board together and maybe even a playlist or free writing or something with them to really understand what's going on in their mind and what they want out of the shoot.
Yeah.
And then from there, we'll plan a certain extent, like, okay, this kind of pool or this kind of backdrop, these colors and those kind of things. And then from there, I just will gather a whole bunch of items to bring to the shoot for us to play with, and then let the creativity flow and let there be freedom within that space.
So do you like to be with these commission shoots? Do you like the direction from the client? Do you kind of like having free reign to create what you feel like?
Yeah, the beauty of these shoots that I've been doing lately is that a lot of them, they see my work and it's almost more of an experiential experience that they're looking for. In a lot of cases, they just want that feeling of being free and expressing themselves in this beautiful way in the water. And then they trust my vision beyond that. A lot of times I've found that we do create a bit of a vision together for the shoot, but otherwise I think I've just really lucked out with all of the people who've hired me, and that we're just really excited to create something together in which they can freely express themselves in a new way.
Yeah, so they're kind of coming for the Birdee experience, for your kind of flavor, your kind of themes that come through the shoot. See, that's great. That's really nice when they can tell you that. I have clients that come and will show me a specific image from another photographer or from a magazine, and they're like, I want this. And I find it really hard because I didn't shoot it, so I don't know how it was taken. And how do I create this thing that someone else came out of someone else's brain? Whereas having someone come to you and say, I just want what you do. I want you to create me in your situation. I find that a lot nicer.
Yeah, I do feel really lucky that my shoots have ended up that way. I have to say, looking at your work, if anyone could do a planned shoot like that, it would be you. I really admire your work in that way, and how you build the sets and just all of the detail and thought that goes into, I can tell a lot of that goes into your work, and it really is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm terrible at planning. I'm not a plan shooter.
Really?
I'm more like you, I think, in terms of I will bring a bunch of stuff to the shoot that we might be able to use, whether it's actual physical things or just ideas. And then wherever we end up is what we get, you know. Very rarely do I go into a shoot, apart from maybe building the walls of a set, and know what I want from it, because I like that feeling of discovery. I like letting the water kind of tell me what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too. I love the element of surprise that you can get from certain shoots.
Yes.
And how, I mean, I've had some where the water clarity wasn't what I was hoping. And then we ended up in the hot tub and got incredible pictures. I mean, who would have thought? You know, it's
right.
like sometimes those times where it's forces you to think outside the box and try something new and kind of reroute, and then find that other thing that I would have never done before, but it was so magical and so beautiful, and it made a different look than I would have normally done. It's so fun. I love that feeling.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of how you grow as an artist is being open to those things, you know, letting the universe kind of throw things at you. And as long as you're prepared to be able to roll with them, you can get some stuff that, like you say, you'd never even thought of.
Yeah, definitely. I'm realizing more and more. And then also making the space for that to happen, creating, you know, making sure we have enough time and all the different things to play with. And even if we're not going to use most of it, I love to bring enough to a shoot that we have all these different things we can try that are new. And yeah. Do you do that too?
No, I do. But mine's more of a mental sort of situation where it's this thing that I call chaos theory. And it's basically being open to anything that can happen and being ready for it. And so when I built my pool studio here in Long Beach, I built basically a pool that I could shoot in 360 degrees. So that if I was with a client and we're shooting one direction, and then I happened to see something else, I'd be like, oh, actually, you know what? Let's turn 180 and shoot this way. So for me, it's about being prepared for the unexpected.
Wow, that's incredible. You have a space you can do that. And I love that idea of the chaos theory, and yeah, just going for it and seeing what kind of different things you can create. And I love that you have that space where you can shoot from any angle, and
yeah,
that's really neat.
It really kind of makes things, I think that's how my creativity works. Like I don't work very well with prescribed boundaries, because I overthink things and I get kind of stressed by the fact that I've got to nail this one thing. But if I have, you know, kind of an open canvas that I can just kind of throw things at and go, oh, that's working, let's keep doing that, then that's when I get my best images. And I was doing a shoot yesterday with a model that I've worked with a lot, Jessica, and, you know, my lights didn't work for one shot. But what I saw in that shot that had no strobes going on was incredible, and it was something that I'd never even thought of doing. And so then I just turned my lights off and did the rest of the shoot, the natural light that we were using. And I would never have gone down that road if my lights hadn't failed.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see how those turned out. Are you going to be sharing any of them?
Yeah. I think once I get through the edit, I'll stick them up on my Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, I've never used lights before, so I've never experienced something like that. But I don't have a specific pool that I use.
Yeah.
And so I think that in itself lends to the chaos theory a little bit, using a different pool almost every time I'm shooting. And like, what are we going to get this time? What's the water going to be like? And I try and pick pools that I, you know, look at what the surface is and make sure that they keep it really clean, and, you know, how many stairs and railings and things like that are in it, and the direction of light. But otherwise, sometimes you just never know.
Well, I think because that's how I started that way before I had this studio here. I started, you know, like you are, traveling and using random pools, and you never know what you're going to get. And I feel like it makes you a more agile photographer. Like it gives you more skills in terms of being able to deal with anything, because you turn up at this, whether it's a rented pool or if it's the client's pool, and it could be amazing and they could be well looked after, or it could just be total crap, but you've got to make it work.
Yes. I had this one pool that was a black bottom pool, which so it's kind of exciting. It's something a little different.
Yeah.
And it was a friend's pool and it wasn't clean when we showed up that day. It was really dirty. The water was murky. There was all kinds of leaves and stuff in it. And we were like, well, we're here. We have the day. We're going to do it, like, let's see what we can get. And I actually love the pictures that we got because, it looks like we're in a lake or a natural body of water somewhere. You can't tell we're in a pool at all.
Oh, so that's cool.
It was really neat. It was hard because I had a hard time seeing her and I just had a hard time navigating with the water clarity. But it was amazing. Yeah, we had so much fun. It was like once we could just let go and just enjoy ourselves and have fun, and then the outcome was great. It was really cool.
I love that sort of thing, like especially with the water clarity, because it gives you a different look. It gives you a different softness to the images and all that sort of stuff. But when I was traveling around doing this and jumping in pools that were terrible, I was just thinking, man, if I was like a land photographer, you don't get these problems. You could travel to another place, rent a studio, and it's not like you're going to walk into that studio and they're going, oh, you know what? The smoke machine's stuck on. We can't turn it off. So you're going to have to shoot with a smoke machine.
Yeah, that's so true. I never thought about that before.
It's just the stuff we have to deal with, like it's kind of unacceptable a lot of the time, but we have to push through.
And the temperature too. It's not like, generally a studio that you might rent will be a comfortable temperature to shoot in.
Yeah.
But sometimes, some people might say it's heated and it's still pretty darn cold to shoot in for several hours.
So if you're doing a commission like that, do you usually use the pool that the client has recommended, or are you renting a pool and then the client's turning up to you?
So I usually rent the pool. A few times I have had the client had a pool or a friend has a pool that's close to where we want to shoot. But lately I've been renting them through different means, through apps or calling around. And I kind of like that a little bit of control in it just to make sure now that it's going to be heated to a certain temperature and different things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens if a client turns up and the pool is cold? How do you deal with that?
So I have had that happen, and the clients are always so positive and just excited, and it's like they don't mind, and I do.
Okay.
Like I'm cold, and they're just like, yeah, this is great. But yeah, I would talk to the host about heating it, and they turn up the heat, and it takes a little while, but usually we might just have to kind of hold off for an hour or two while the heat's running, have some hot tea, sit in the sun, things like that. If we get cold. Yeah.
I think so. Looking at your work, I think that those sorts of uncomfortablenesses, like, goosebumps and cold water and that sort of stuff, kind of work for you because your work is so real and so raw that, goosebumps on someone's skin, I don't think would look out of place.
Thank you. Yeah. I do feel like the place where my work comes from, I want it to feel really natural and real. And like there's that certain energy in it of just feminine playtime, and it doesn't have to be posed or perfect for that to be a beautiful thing. And yeah, so there is that element that I don't want it to look too planned or posed or perfect, even though I am drawn to that. That one image that's just wow. But I'd want it to be an experience that when people look at it, it feels freeing for them.
Yeah. It's a very voyeuristic kind of look. Like you're capturing these moments of real intimacy. And, it's not often that the subject is connecting with the viewer. Like it's very disconnected, I'd say. Is that kind of your kind of aesthetic? Of that sort of voyeuristic kind of style?
I never really thought of it like that. I think that where it all came from for me was my own experience of experiencing freedom in a natural state in water.
Yeah.
And I started out by doing self-portraits in that way. And it was so freeing for me. And it was such a beautiful way to connect to my femininity and bravery and being comfortable in my own skin, finding my voice, being comfortable with sharing what I'm creating with other people. And when I started sharing my work that I was just creating for myself, a lot of other people started reaching out, wanting that experience for themselves too. So that's really the heart of my work, and where it comes from is really the experience, and then to be able to have some beautiful artwork that you can hold in your hands and see how beautiful you are, and remind you of that freedom and the bravery that you have within yourself.
Yeah, so it's the images you create are kind of the result of the experience. They're not the sum of it.
Yeah. And maybe because that's so much of where my heart is, I don't really have people coming to me with a specific image in mind. Mm-hmm. Maybe that energy really translates in my work. And unfortunately, that is the kind of client that I've drawn.
Which is great, right? That's kind of a perfect storm for you as an artist.
It is. I love it. It's really my dream. It's such a dream job for me. I mean, I really just started doing it, offering it for other people a couple years ago. And so for 15 years, I've been doing ultrasound for work. And this last couple of years, I decided this is my passion. I love it so much. And I don't really want to be doing anything else. I just want to be creating these spaces for people to feel this joy and freedom and this feeling of being able to be underwater in this way. I do shoots on land too, and just the feeling of being able to be in nature naked, or, you know, if you wanted to wear outfits too, but just that freedom and that feeling of feeling beautiful in front of the camera. Yeah, I just kind of went for it a couple years ago, and it's a dream. Yeah.
So this is your full-time gig now?
It is. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I know. It's pretty amazing.
So let's take it back a bit. So what made you get underwater in the first place?
So yeah, it was back in 2014. I started doing some self-portraits, and it was really a way for me to kind of cope with what was going on in my life at the time. And I didn't even really, it wasn't like, oh, I need to cope, let me do self-portraits. It was all just happened really naturally.
Yeah.
Just an outlet, something to do. And it really started connecting me to myself more. It's really confronting, actually, to do self-portraits, but it helped me feel more connected to myself at the time. And at the time, I had a pool at my house, and I was just, out there swimming, and just the feeling that I had when I was swimming, I was just like, oh, what if I could take pictures underwater? And, what if I could capture this feeling in a picture? And so right then that day, I got out of the pool and ran to Target and bought a waterproof case for my phone, and got back home and jumped in the pool again with it. And my first pictures, I just was in love. This is beautiful and amazing. And I just created this dream world, where reality wasn't very pretty, but I could create this other world and these feelings that I wanted to embrace more. And yeah, so that's how I started with underwater. It felt like Elizabeth Gilbert talks in her book, Big Magic, about inspiration just coming and hitting you. And, maybe it'll go on to someone else if you don't grab it right away.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like that. Like I had to grab it really quick and run with it before it left me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever felt that way with inspiration.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think I tend to think of a lot of things at once. Like I'll go down a rabbit hole and lose myself for, however long thinking about all these things, and then come back with a whole bunch of stuff, which I then sort of file away and may never do or do. But yeah, sometimes it is that sort of, I need to strike now or it's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's like, sometimes when that happens for me too, I know that I could just put it on the side and keep putting it off. Like, oh, it's going to take a lot of work and I have to do all this, to do it. And maybe it's just not meant to happen.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the other thing and that's probably why we work the way we do, because we have this openness to the universe or to whatever. The things that will happen, and things that aren't meant to happen didn't happen. I think it's that acceptance that makes a lot of us water people, because you have to kind of deal with what the water gives you. You can't control it so much.
Yes, I love how you made that connection. I do think that us water people, we do have to flow with those kind of things. There's so many different elements, and so many people that I've connected to. Yeah, I guess everyone that does underwater photography, it's like we connect on that as well, and also just this other world that we're so enthralled with, and the etherealness of it, but also being up for something new. And I love that.
And speaking of something new, you shoot a lot of film. How did you go from shooting with your phone in a case to then shooting film underwater?
Yeah, I love shooting with film. And so when I started sharing my images on Instagram that I was getting with my phone, my self-portraits, I started meeting some incredible people through Instagram. It was really this beautiful community, especially back in 2014. It just felt like people that I could relate to that I didn't really have at the time in my personal life, real life. And so I met some people through Instagram, and a couple of those people were shooting film, and I loved what they were doing. They're so, so talented, really beautiful work. I just really connected to what they were doing, and we built a friendship, and then they started encouraging me to keep going and maybe try film. What about shooting film underwater? And so it was really, I have to thank my friends that I met through Instagram for encouraging me to keep going, and also to try new things like that, and to try these different ways of capturing. And it was a little bit of a process finding a film camera that I could do self-portraits underwater with. Ryan Muirhead and I did a collaboration, and he found a camera that I could do self-portraits with and told me about it. That was how I got started doing them underwater. And for some above water portraits, I think I went on Craigslist and found a Minolta, and then I got all the equipment to develop my own black and white film at home, just in the sink. Oh. And because I'm like, if I'm going to be shooting all these self-portrait nudes, I kind of don't want to send them to the lab.
That's true.
I want to be able to develop them myself, at least in the beginning, and get a hang of it. And so it was another one of those experiences where I got the inspiration. My friends were telling me to shoot film, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go get everything today, and then just like shot a roll of film and developed it all in one day, and it was so exciting. And just seeing the physical product of what just happened, like this is physically on film, and it's just beautiful, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I love the grain, and accidentally open the camera and the light leaks and stuff like that. It just kind of adds to the magic of it to me. And I'm all about the experience of something. So film, I feel like it's this physical product of an experience. So I love that kind of, because even that, and I'm just kind of making all these links, because even with film, there's so much that can go wrong that can add to the film, can add to the image, like light leaks or scratches or, overexposing or something like that you don't get with a digital experience, because it's so instant that you'll see that you've done something wrong and fix it. Whereas with film, you will shoot a whole roll not knowing if it's any good. And then it comes out the other end and you're like, oh, wow, okay, that's not even what I was expecting to get, either in a good way or a bad day. That's true. Yeah. And for the commission shoots, I still always love to shoot film, but I will also shoot digital just to make sure we get A lot of really good pictures.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I mean, sometimes the film, it just, especially underwater, constant movement, and you just never know. I mean, it just might not be quite the feeling that we were going for. And so it can be a little tricky. Sometimes I'll get one good one off a roll of film. Sometimes I won't get any. Sometimes I'll get like 10 or 20.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It is a little bit of a gamble. So, having the digital there as a backup is definitely a good idea. I shot an album cover a few years ago for a band in LA called Wise Blood, and we built this whole set. And the artist was very, very much into analog. So she wanted, she wanted me to shoot on film, and I was like, we probably shouldn't do that because what if it doesn't work? So we shot it on digital. But my assistant, Jenny Beaumont, who is an amazing underwater photographer and cinematographer, she's deep into the film world. She has a 16 millimeter underwater video camera. Well, not video, but film camera, motion camera. And we shot some sequences on this Bolex underwater camera, and it looked really cool. But when we got the film back, it was pretty much black. We got pretty much nothing out of it.
Oh, such a bummer.
Yeah.
I love that shoot you did with Wise Blood. It is absolutely beautiful. And her music is beautiful. What a great collaboration. For you two to do that project together.
It was so cool. And in terms of technical difficulties, the beautiful thing was, my imagery is generally very sharp and crisp and clean. But we had technical difficulties on the day, and we shot into the night, which is not what we were expecting. Didn't have enough light. And so I had to basically push the ISO on my camera like way up. And so all the images are really grainy. But she loves grainy images. So what came out the other end was something that looked like it was probably shot on, some like 1200 ASA film. So my mistakes ended up adding to that imagery and kind of making it more in line with her vision.
Oh, I love hearing the backstory on that. That's so cool. Yeah. That's another one of those chaos things like we were talking about. I mean, just kind of running with it and rolling with the punches. And then what you got was just incredible, and she loved it, and kind of worked out for everybody.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't always work out. There are times when it just absolutely goes to crap.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about those very much.
Exactly. Yeah, we won't highlight those.
That's right.
Oh, that's so cool. And, well, good thing you didn't shoot the whole thing on film, because then it really would have all turned out black.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That was just me kind of going, we need to have a plan B here. We need to make sure we're covered, because we're probably never going to get to do this again. So.
Oh, my gosh, with that set you made and all the props and everything.
Yeah. And that set melted. It disintegrated within sort of 2 hours. So we had a very short window to shoot them.
Wow. That's amazing. How long did it take you to make that set?
We spent about 5 days building it, mainly because we had one day where they originally had a different set designer on who hadn't done underwater before, and his designs weren't going to work. So we kind of wasted a day with that. And then the next sort of 3 days we spent building the set and dressing it and all that sort of stuff. And then the 5th day was when we sunk it and shot it.
Wow. Is that because there are specific materials you can't use or you need to use underwater for sets like that?
Yeah, it was also the first set I'd built in my new studio. So it was kind of a learning process of how to build a set that's not going to sort of disintegrate. And what we found was that even because we were painting the walls with paint, was some paint would just flake off as soon as it got wet. Other paint would never dry. So it was just kind of working out which products to use to be able to do it. So there's a lot of trial and error in that shoot, particularly that I learned going forward. So now my sets don't take anywhere near as long as that to build, just because I did all that work.
Wow, that's incredible. All the thought that goes into it. And the material, wouldn't have even thought, the paint that you're using. And then do you go out and find, because you had a bed and a dresser?
Yeah. Well, she actually did that. She found so Natalie from Wise Blood, she did all the production design, and she went to all the Goodwill places, and they would send me pictures of the furniture they were going to get, and I would let them know whether it was going to work or not. And even just doing that shoot, like we had a single bed, like a metal bed frame with a mattress on it. but we learnt pretty early on that mattresses don't sink.
Oh.
So we ended up having to cut the mattress up and pull the guts out of it and all that sort of stuff just to be able to get it to sink. I'm pretty good these days knowing just from looking at a piece of furniture whether it's going to sink or float.
That's a true niche talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it comes in handy. So because I shoot a lot of music videos and I have productions come to me just to shoot it, but then I basically come on as a consultant for the production design as well to teach them what's going to work under the water, because otherwise it can end up just being a waste of time because they've bought furniture that, we will never get to sink.
Oh, yeah.
So
I could totally see that happening. I mean, spending 5 days on a set and then it doesn't sink.
Yeah. I mean, I've had couches that we've put, 80 pounds on and they still don't sink.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a lot of fun, especially when you're on set. You've got, you've only got one day to do it all and everyone's standing around waiting for this couch to drown.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll know where to go if I ever need advice on what will sink.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I've got to write a book.
Yeah.
do you tend to use a lot of props in your work?
I use fabric for backdrops sometimes, and then I'll use sheer organzas for a bit of cover up for the model if they want to be nude but not totally nude, have a little bit of fabric and a dress. It's kind of a nice in between to have a little fabric to play with so they feel a little bit covered up.
Right.
Yeah. It also lends to the ethereal look as well.
Yeah. Like a bit of texture in there.
Texture, and some of them it comes out looking like a painting, which I really love. Looking at old paintings, and they use a lot of fabrics in those where it's nude, but they'll have this beautiful tapestry or fabric, and it's kind of a little bit like that, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you doing any optical kind of changes as well? Are you putting anything in front of the lens when you're shooting to kind of mess with the optics?
I have not done that, but I've been thinking about trying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I will on land. I'll use prisms and things like that to try, and I'm always after that dreamy look to make something feel a little bit otherworldly.
Yeah.
And so when I'm on land, I feel a little bit like a fish out of water. Like, how can I make this feel a little more dreamy? And so I'll use things in that way, like a prism or fabrics or something in front of the lens. But I've not tried it underwater yet. I have done some double exposures to layer and...
Oh, underwater?
Well, what I'll do is I'll take a roll of film and shoot flowers or nature or something, whatever the element is that I'm feeling, and then take that roll of film, put it back in the camera, and then shoot the underwater pictures.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of adds that layer of mystery. How is it going to turn out? And when it turns out, it's just beautiful and exciting.
So how do you what sort of planning goes into something like that? Like, do you have to shoot the first roll like very contrasty so that there's still some information from the second one can get through?
So when I first started doing it, I really had no idea how double exposures work.
Yeah.
And it was really just what I was feeling. I was feeling like I just loved this flowers that I was seeing, or this orange tree and orange blossoms. And I would just go for a walk and take photos as I saw them and was inspired, and then put the roll back in the camera, and then I did self-portraits that way. And then now that I've learned a few more things about double exposures, by some of them not turning out, I've learned wherever the light hits on the film, you're not really going to be able to see an image through that the next go round. Right. So if it's a really bright image, that's kind of it. You're not going to appreciate the second exposure on that negative. And so I think I just lucked out the first several times I did it by shooting darker or just softer lighting that wasn't very contrasty. And then the second exposure was really nice and soft with that flower or tree or whatever I was doing. So now I can be a little more intentional about it, that I figured that out.
Is it a case of, so one of the images kind of has to have less detail in it and kind of more blacks and more whites so that the second image has the detail of that can come through? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So the first image, say you have a silhouette of a flower that's taking up most of the picture, but the bright sky behind it. And then the second image will just show up where the dark part was.
Right.
The silhouette part of the flower. And then the sky will still be blown out. You won't really see the second image in the sky, but it'll just show up where the dark part was.
Okay. And then so when you take a roll of film, you expose it 24 times or whatever, and then you rewind it and then put it back in the camera? Or do you just rewind it and leave it in there and then bring it back in? Like, how do you line up the original images or the original shots with the next ones? Or do they overlap with the frames either side? Or
Yeah, so that was another trial and error thing for me. For some reason, I don't really Google things before I do them. I just kind of throw myself at them.
That's good, though. You like that surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the surprise. Trial and error. That's how I learn. And so, yeah, the first several rolls, I did have that line in the middle of my image. And I guess some of them it kind of worked out. I didn't really mind it too much.
Yeah.
Or they were just off just slightly so I could crop it down and you didn't really see it anymore. And it's really difficult the way I was doing it to get them to line up because I was using different cameras. So I'd shoot it in my regular camera on land first to get the flowers, and then I'd rewind it and take that roll and put it in my little underwater plastic point and shoot camera. And because the cameras were different, it was hard for me to figure out how to line them up. And I've learned about this using a Sharpie to note where the film was laying on your first roll.
Yeah. When
you load it and you get the film tight and ready to go, you mark it with a Sharpie where it is on there. And then when you put it in this camera again, you can make sure it lines up the same.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. I thought so too.
Yeah.
This should help moving forward.
Yeah, totally. Otherwise you're kind of just blind, right? Like just trying to I remember it, depending on how many sprockets you've gone over and how many, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you teaching any of this stuff? Like, are you teaching underwater film photography or self-portraits?
Oh, I love sharing and teaching. And I have done a couple in-person workshops before that were really fun. I am really, really shy. And so it was really big for me to get in front of people and talk. And it's been really good practice. Yeah. And so I did field trip a couple years, and then I did Indie Film Lab. They invited me to come speak.
Oh, cool.
Those were so fun. And really, when I can get out of my head about it and just appreciate the purpose of it and sharing and inspiring and connecting with other people, it's so exciting. I love it so much. And so this last year, actually just a few months ago, at the beginning of 2021, I was connecting with a friend of mine, and we were just over dinner sharing about our own experiences with self-portraiture and how we both went through that period of time when we found self-portraiture to be really helpful for us to connect with ourselves. Yeah. And we're like, wow, there's something here. And we're just talking about it and getting really excited about just how powerful that experience was. And we felt like maybe we could offer a class or something and share this with other people. Yeah. Because there were a lot of things that took a lot of trial and error for us to learn, and would have been really helpful for us to have someone guiding us, or to have a tutorial of some kind, or a community to talk to and share with about those experiences. So we started an online workshop where we go through with a group of people together. And the first one we did 7 weeks, and it's just been incredible. Just this community that we have, and able to share what we've learned, not only photography wise, but emotionally, going through the process of doing self-portraits and what comes up. And
because it must kind of open people up to new feelings about themselves, because it is confronting. Like, I've done self-portraits myself under the water, mainly just because I'm testing the lights. But then, seeing yourself on film or on the camera, you can't, it's not like looking at a mirror. You see yourself from different angles, and it must make you feel differently about yourself.
Yeah, it really does. And then it's like, what do you want to do with your self-portraits also? Where do you want to go with it? What's the purpose? And what can you use it for? And we've explored those different things in our workshop, which is really fun, and exploring connecting with your emotions more and giving some guidance and ways to do that, and to find what different ways to find inspiration for your self-portrait shoot. And how, because sometimes it's kind of hard to sit in front of a camera when you don't feel like you have a purpose. Like, I know there's something here, and what do I want to shoot? But how do I get started? Or how do I find my purpose?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's in retrospect that we realize what we were wanting to express. It doesn't always come, at least for me, I don't even realize it at the moment sometimes. And it's retrospectively that I realize what I was going through and wanting to express. But sometimes it's helpful to have some prompts to get started, to move through those things. So we've helped with that. And then also, what do you want to bring into your life? It's almost like I found that with doing the underwater photography, it's a way of dreaming about the undoable, or things that seem outside of your reach. I think a lot of underwater photographers might feel that way. It's very otherworldly. It's very dreamlike, but it's also possible.
Yeah.
And
because it is real. It is a real place. Yeah. But it's just not somewhere we visit very often.
Exactly. And so it's kind of neat because we talk about how to bring in different elements that you don't think, maybe you don't feel like you're brave or confident or feminine, or have these different elements, or maybe you feel like you might a little bit, but you don't really know how to express them.
Yeah.
And so we help with different prompts and ways to express those, and then see them through a self-portrait. And it's so real when you actually make a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an insight into your own self that you haven't seen before. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So that's where I've been putting a lot of my energy this spring, is this workshop that we've launched. And it's been really fun.
Yeah. So what's coming up for you? Do you have projects that are in the works?
So we're going to be launching another workshop, a self-portraiture workshop. This one, I think we're going to do it a little bit longer in length. We're going to do maybe like 12 weeks. Okay. And we're also going to offer a shorter one for people who just kind of want to see what it's like, but don't want to do something that long. And I also have some shoots coming up this summer that I'm really excited about. I have a couple in Maine.
Oh, cool.
And a couple in Texas. Yeah. And then I'll be coming out to California September of 2021. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, you'll have to come and catch up.
Yes, I would love to.
We have a big community here, so let's get something together.
I love coming out to California. The community there is incredible. I instantly feel that energized sense of community and just instant inspired energy when I come out to California. And yeah, it's like that the ground is vibrating with all the artists there or something. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah. There are some vibrations here, that's for sure. Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to come out back out to California. I've been wanting to move there for years and it just hasn't happened. And so for now, I just travel there and spend a couple months there and try and see everyone while I'm there. And yeah. Well,
that's great. Jamie, thanks so much. This has been so cool just hearing about the way you got into underwater and how you use the self-portraits as a kind of therapy. It's really cool.
Well, thank you, Brett, for having me. It's been such an honor.
It's an honor for me too. So let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. If you'd like to support with the production of these episodes, you can purchase our very cool merchandise at theunderwaterpodcast.com. We've got branded coffee mugs, stickers, beer cozies, and posters featuring our amazing illustration and logo by Joe Hodino. If you'd like to connect with us or learn more about our guests, you can reach us at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram. We also have a Facebook group where you can discuss the episodes and even get your questions answered by our guests. There's a link to it in the show notes. Also, don't forget about Waterproof magazine, showcasing the best in underwater art. Read it online or purchase a print edition at waterproofmag.org. You can learn more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring at brettstanley.com or Brett S Photo on Instagram. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.